Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, coming to you from Chicago, and
Dallas, Texas.
she's in isolation just because she was traveling. I'm not, but there's nothing to do in Chicago. So basically, we're coming to you from our little home studios, put up a new camera, throw on the lights, and chat. So, as you know, Summer and I are podcasters.
Or maybe you didn't know. Now you
Yeah,
know.
maybe you didn't. Summer does an unconventional woman podcast. And if I recall, you've been in this groove now for 5-ish years.
Yeah, it's
To,
been a long time.
and I hit the publish button for the first time in June of 2015.
Ah, and her life hasn't been the same.
No, it hasn't. And frankly, it has lasted longer than any job that I've had. Which,
Amen to that.
yeah. And even I might have gotten sick of me as a boss. Well, that's kind of where we are. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today.
Mm-hmm.
Podcasting itself has changed so much in the last 5 or 6 years. And if you listen to podcasts, or if you don't, if it just has never been your thing, we've got a little bit of insight on the back end of how much work it takes, and how much work it takes both to create content and also just to sort of manage this incredible industry that has grown up since
Right.
we have been doing what we're doing. So, Summer, what has your experience been in these many years of producing shows, and how many episodes do you have?
I am actually on episode 69, and that gets into, determining your frequency and when you want to create. And within these 5 years, while some may consider that number low, others may consider that high. For me, I had to be honest with myself and where I was in terms of there are moments when I don't feel like podcasting. And so I take a break and stop rather than just pressing publish and putting something out there because I'm supposed to. According to who, I don't know. Because
Right,
what I do is
right.
I'm independent. So it's not a network breathing down my throat telling me what to do. And that was learned over time. Because in the beginning, I was looking left, right. What are others doing? I should be doing that too. Even from the format, the way that I started the show was based on what others were kind of doing, and which is just natural, right? But then once you build the confidence and you get comfortable in what you are doing, again, the beauty of being independent, I began to find my voice. And of course, with the help of things like the E League, which led me directly to you, Cynthia, and a couple of other women that I've just kept close in touch with and study and learn from, and share tips with, is really when I began to hone it. But like any good thing, there are moments of fatigue, you know? How about you, Cynthia?
You prefer quality over quantity.
Yes.
And that initially in 2015 and 2016, before everybody was doing podcasts, before the New York Times was doing every media entity has now come into this. As you gained more experience, how did the podcast fulfill sort of your personal mission, your growth, your evolution this time in your life?
Good question. And again, back in the beginning, when you're trying to be all the things for everybody, I created the unconventional woman as a way of celebrating those who are adventurous and don't necessarily follow status quo and are barrier breakers in their own rights. And I even took on the identity, if you will, of being Miss Unconventional, right? Because it's interesting how you have to take on an identity of an alter ego in order to really step into that superpower we all have. And so it was about being anonymous. I'm Miss Confessions, not so much Summer Martin.
Yeah.
That wasn't until later when I started to lean into sharing more of my thoughts and who Summer is, and not just this, talking to people and getting their stories and just, oh, you're unconventional. That's great. Um,
That's great.
Yeah, and so it became more, of a diary based theme over time, and definitely more recent. It's just me sharing thoughts about any and everything. Now, who the hell am I? Yeah, I'm Summer Martin, God damn it. But it's not coming from an ego base. It really is therapeutic, and I just unapologetically am comfortable with being me. So that is again kind of the ride and evolution of podcasting. And another thing that you mentioned, because I wanted to initially talk about how podcasting is so in vogue, right? And has been for at least the last 2, 3 years,
Yeah.
particularly when you start seeing these big networks coming in and celebrities.
Hillary Clinton has a podcast now. I should just give up.
Joe Rogan is getting $300 million. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, it's sexy now.
Yeah.
But I say, in order to get to those levels, if you're not already a celebrity and you're like us, just, everyday people, consistency, quality, something to say is the ingredients to doing this,
Mm-hmm.
And it's not all rosy because, again, the premise of this episode is talking about those moments of fatigue,
Yes.
burnout.
The women's podcast group that Summer and I are a part of, and we've had these conversations for years now, because every person who runs a podcast, who manages and self-publishes and produces, experiences all of this in addition to their life. I've moved twice, one from a house to a condo, did a renovation during owning that condo, then realized that wasn't the right condo, and then moved to another condo and was doing another renovation. And so, I mean, life goes on, right? And, sometimes you're feeling sick and sometimes you're traveling. And so we all sort of come to grips with really understanding the quantity and the quality, and where do we want our energies to lie and focus. And then content wise, so Summer has told you a little bit about how her content has evolved. For Advanced TV Herstory, I felt like in 2015, just being able to say, I'm going to focus on TV women was a big deal. And it was a big deal. There was not a lot out there that was honing in on the notions of representation of women on TV, representation of women of color on TV, and telling all of these rich, deep stories that nobody had really understood. Pulling out the true, I mean, the great work of so many different authors who have studied this. So author scholars, professors who have written textbooks, who are teaching this stuff. And it was a great, like first couple of years where I was just burning up fresh ground. And then everybody started having podcasts. Not that I was hunting down celebrities. It was not a fan podcast. It was a little bit more about the industry and about what we saw on TV and how it's affected culture. And so even today, the podcast is premised on connecting the dots of TV and feminism with American culture and politics. Connecting dots. And so 4 areas still, even within this little box, 4 areas: TV, feminism, pop culture, and politics. And they all end up intertwined. And we bump into mental health and racism, sexism, all of it.
Yeah.
And here, everybody has a podcast. Everybody has a podcast. And everybody's talking about this stuff. And that's great. I kind of feel like I've done my thing, right? I just simply created enough of an understanding that there's places to take all of these conversations. Go, have them, do more work, conduct more research, write more books. And now I'm like, I don't know, And what if podcasting starts to fade as a thing because we have so much technology going on that Zoom on, Zoom recorded shows on YouTube are now the thing to do. And Summer and I are just a little ahead of the curve.
I know.
Because I'd much rather talk to you and see you and have another voice in these conversations, even though it's not necessarily premised on facts in a book.
Sure.
Because I think that's what America needs right now. I think everybody, well, if you are willing to be hit on the head with the idea that America is a sexist and racist culture, even in 2021, then you don't need to listen to really what I'm saying anymore. And I
Yeah.
can gush all day long. I could create podcasts all day long that gush about who all of these tremendous people are. And I have to do a memorial podcast or two, actually, of all of the grand women who passed away in 2020. The women we saw on TV who are, even Olivia de Havilland, who you think of as a movie star. Well, she was on a lot of very powerful made for TV movies. But I don't
Wow.
want to do it. I kind
Yeah.
of feel like everybody else is doing it, and
Yeah.
nobody has time to listen anymore.
Yeah. That's the other thing. It definitely has shifted. For me, in addition to being a podcaster, I'm a fan of podcasts. So I listen to quite a bit. However, listening has cut down on it, I have to be more intentional and deliberate with it because obviously we're not commuting, we're not doing a lot that would have put me in a position where usually I have the time to lend an ear. So I'm very intentional about trying to carve out that time. But it is a crowded space, but there are a lot of good voices and great storytelling. If you want to get into it, I just say, number one, good job, have at it. Why not? But it's not easy. Just like with anything else,
Right.
if you're doing this because you want a deal with Spotify or you want to try to get a $500 million deal, okay.
I hope you know some people.
It's going to take a while to get there if that is your end goal. But if you're just in it because you appreciate the craft for what it is and you've got something you want to share and say, by all means. But also on top of that, once you're into it, it's okay to take a break, and that's what Cynthia and
Yeah.
I have constantly go through the ebb and flows of creativity. You can't force it. It is heavily reliant on inspiration, self inspiration, and motivation.
Hmm.
And that's how quality work is put out there.
And in the quest to be relevant, you come back from your break, whether it's a month or, 3 months, whatever it is. And because we are living in a very rapidly changing world, your voice has changed. Your perspective has changed. Something has changed in your life or in the American, in our ethos, in what we're breathing right now, that
Yeah.
will impact how you talk to your audience, whoever your audience is.
Hmm.
The beauty is it is definitely a marathon. It is not a sprint. It's a little bit like, geez, I mean, you have people who like sweat the launch of their podcast as though it's like being asked to prom or something. And in the end, there are so many other details that just go into having the confidence to hit the publish button.
Yes.
Are you about substance or are you about style? And if it's a business, if this is to support your business, great. I mean, this is really the time to factor it in as a really great tactic. It's still a very novel, low cost tactic versus even video.
Yep.
But technology is changing everything, and in some ways bringing the cost way down, but then having so many others in the marketplace that the competition for people's eyes or ears has just,
Yeah.
so keep your expectations in check, I guess.
Pretty much with everything in life. Manage your expectations, and that's
Yes.
the success.
Yes.
If you're into podcasting and or want to pick our brains, and again, I'm always learning, so I'm not going to act like I'm an expert by any means. Subscribe to the show or even send us an email or shout us out in the comments if you've got questions and want to connect on a more personal level in terms of podcasting. We always love to talk about it and encourage those and share mistakes and all that good stuff. But yeah, right now I am enjoying listening more so than talking. And when I feel the spirit is moved to do so, I will create a new episode.
And this is kind of closing out this episode. I have been, I've been quiet now for more than a month, and partly because this became such a great project, a fun sort of distractive project, and I don't know how it factors into the podcast because my name does not appear in my podcast name, Advanced TV Herstory. My Twitter handle, my Instagram, it's all in that. I don't really have too much of an identity, whereas this video show with you is all about our faces and our names.
Whose show is it? What?
Even in doing these women who have now passed in 2020, Olivia de Havilland, Diana Rigg, I mean, some great names that of women who we saw, who were part of some of the best TV of the 70s or the 80s and even the 2000s. And then also a lot of women who were behind the scenes or at a regional level doing incredible work and pioneers in the field who will never get the credit, and in a year where the headlines, the wildest, craziest headlines you could ever think of still hardly garnered any attention because there were even wilder headlines happening at the same time. The passing of way too many talented people. We are a nation that needs more than a few moments of silence to grieve. But on my podcast, it is the sacred space for us to do that for the women of TV who are no longer with us.
Folks, if I do have one ask. Well, I have a few, but let me ask you this first. Please check out this woman's show at the bottom. Just pull it up on wherever you get your podcasts or wherever this link takes you, and literally just scroll through the episodes, see whichever one, just pick a subject matter she's talking about or person she's talking about, and just press play. You have to check out. Okay.
No, I can't do that because it's going to look like I copy you.
No. I'm just saying, some stuff you just have to see to believe, folks. And I highly recommend just peruse it, pick one or two. You do that, report back to me. I'm telling you, it's life changing.
If you want something that approaches your heart more than your head, then Summer's Unconventional Woman. She pulls these interviews out with kids, like with 10-year-olds, who it's like the old Art Linkletter show all over again, where you just start talking to very articulate young people. Not that that's every episode.
No, it's not. Yeah.
It's not, but there are some very dear moments. And sometimes it just makes your own challenges and your gripes about life and your crabbiness. It all comes, it's you're able to set it aside because instead you're thinking about Summer's thoughts and the very positive framework that she gets to by the end of every conversation with herself that you have the privilege of listening to.
Crazy, you guys. I'm talking to myself.
If Billy Idol can dance with himself, then by God, go talk to yourself.
That is probably the best way to ride this out. I mean,
yes. Shoot us a note. We'll connect you with people if you want to step in at a much higher level, more coordinated level. If you want to do it for business, we know some people who know some people. We don't necessarily do this for others, but we do know really solid people who do. So who knows what we're going to talk about next?
Who knows? I mean, we've got a whole new year, girl. So much to talk about already. We're in for a good ride, you guys, and we just appreciate you lending your few minutes with us. We appreciate you for sharing the show and subscribing.
We're going to get through this together with smiles on our faces because we want them there. We're not having people tell us to smile. And that is one of the beauties of wearing a mask in public, is that you don't have to smile. So I'm going to ride this out with that happy note. Subscribe to the Summer and Cynthia show. Take a listen to the Unconventional Woman podcast. Come on over to Advanced TV Herstory. We're doing this because we care about you, but you've got thoughts, you've got ideas. Send them our way.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. Peace.